I found something really fucking weird while researching local cryptid sightings. I've been interested in weird and unexplainable shit for years. I've gone down a ton of different rabbit holes, and a few weeks ago, I started to get more into cryptids. Dogman sightings seem to be pretty common in my state, and after reading a bit about them, I decided that I wanted to start researching some local sightings. Things got really weird when I started using the names of the towns near me in my search queries. I found a post on the NADP message board from 2022 that described a multi-year chain of dogman sightings in a town called Boxford. They go back so far that they have sort of been absorbed into the town's folklore. Something about the post felt really weird to me. The original post about Boxford kept getting deleted with no explanation at all until an admin pinned it. OP made a few more posts after this. He said that his house was being searched when he left because when he came back, his stuff was out of place. I know this sounds like typical schizo shit, but there are a few details that I cannot explain. There was one time when he came home to a bunch of police cars without license plates parked in his driveway, and he got photos. His stories are pretty tough to explain away. Someone mentioned the incident on Reddit like a year after it happened, but the post was deleted. The comments and title are still there though. What do you make of all this? Boxford is less than 10 minutes away from where I live, so this one hit pretty close to home. The first post about Boxford on the NADP forums, and the earliest mention of anything going on in the area that I could find online. His other posts, deleted Reddit post. One story I heard, this guy said he had a dogman encounter, and then started talking about it, and a few days later, he is visited by some unknown government officials inquiring into what he saw. He said these guys showed up with some kind of infrasound equipment that emits a frequency that paralyzes animals, and when he told them what he saw, they got very uncomfortable and told him to stop talking about it. Whoever these guys were, they had equipment ready to deal with these dogmen. I actually don't think I should be the authority on what to look for, but all I remember is seeing this photo in some relatively big publication doing a piece on dogman, and it showed this thing way up in a tall ass tree. Almost like, how the fuck is it standing up on just leaves high, and was sent in from some hikers who noticed it after the fact. Obviously, could be doctored, but the backstory of it seemed pretty credible to me. These cryptids, Bigfoot included, seem to like to chase, travel, intimidate, by means of running on top of trees when people are not looking. It's almost as though they like to fuck with people, because we always hear the trees are crashing down behind them. Maybe in reality, we only hear about the survivors because the weird government agency that handles this stuff does not tell us about the killings. For example, that super credible interview of the sheriff, whom in his late 20s/early 30s, while hunting, was attacked with a friend by multiple dogmen in LBL. They barely made it out alive, but apparently, some other sketchy murder of a camper happened at the same time, and he strongly suspects it was the dogmen chasing him. He says even in the 80s, there were National Guard-like police in unmarked black vehicles all around, handling the supposed murder the day he was getting back from his attack. Something like that. The timeline very closely matched up with someone telling him and hunting buddy to be safe because he was being stalked, ended up shredded to pieces in his tent. I know I'm all over the place here, but what I'm trying to say is I think we only hear the survivor stories, and in these stories, they always get pursued, seemingly from atop the trees. Maybe that's why such fast animals are actually brought down to human speed. They are literally jumping from tree to tree to avoid being out in the open, and vulnerable, and the effort it takes drastically reduces their land speed. I just wanted to say right off the bat that I know full well how crazy this sounds, but I think I'm under surveillance by an unknown person/persons. I hesitated a lot prior to writing this out of fear of ridicule, but I think it's important that I say this. Please just hear me out. I'm going to start from the beginning. A few months ago, my younger brother saw dogmen. Dogmen encounters, specifically among children, go back years in my town. I made a post detailing not only my brother's sighting, but the strange behavior patterns displayed by the dogmen in my area as shown in local stories and rumors I've heard over the years. I thought the sighting was particularly odd because the dogmen occasionally followed certain individuals, sometimes for years, without harming them, and I posted both on this forum and on Reddit about what is happening in my area looking for help or advice. My Reddit account was permanently suspended within 1 day due to multiple repeated violations of Reddit's content policy, despite the fact that the account was a throwaway I made specifically for the post. The only other time I had made a Reddit account was several years prior, where I was active on various meme subreddits before losing interest in Reddit. That account has not been suspended as far as I know, but I don't remember the username and cannot check. Roughly a month after I posted on this forum, my post was mysteriously deleted. It took me a few weeks to notice. When I finally did notice, I copied the exact text of my original post, which I drafted in Google Documents, and reposted it with a brief statement, telling that the post disappeared for seemingly no reason. A moderator of this forum responded to my post, saying that neither he nor anyone else on the mod team deleted it, but it may have been deleted accidentally while clearing out spam. I believe my post was deleted accidentally during said cleanup until the following month, when the post was deleted yet again. This time, I noticed rather quickly and reposted it again. I'm not going to paste the text here, but I just checked my pinned repost and it is still up as of June 14th, 2022 at roughly 1 PM EST. In response, it was pinned by a moderator who told me to check my device for malware. I downloaded a software called Malwarebytes and scanned my MacBook Air, which is my primary device. The application reported that it found a keylogger, which logs everything you type and click, among other vague malware. The software ended up quarantining 13 files, each under 2 kilobytes in size, and allowed me to delete them. I deleted them from my device, but I wish I kept them for analysis. I subsequently scanned my old Mac and iPhone and found similar malware, which I deleted. The only thing that those devices had in common was that I had done or searched something Dogmen related on them at some point. According to the file's metadata, the viruses have been on my devices for only a few months, even though I had not used some of them for several years. I replied to the moderator's response to my post about what I had found on my devices, and he directed me to a tech support website. I didn't end up using the service he recommended, but brought all of my devices to a local tech specialist who is a close family friend. He inspected each of the devices and found more spyware on them, even the ones I had scanned. In total, there were 98 malicious files on my new Mac, 53 on my iPhone, 30 on my iPad, and 27 on my old Mac that Malwarebytes had missed. He analyzed the files and disturbingly concluded that each of them were installed via an external drive called NoName, which is the factory default name given to most SD cards, external drives, and USB drives. This means that someone was able to access my devices, which I store in my home, and manually plug something into each of them. The tech specialist told me he was not 100% sure if he was able to find everything, and that I should probably start fresh and buy a new device. I ended up buying a new iPhone as my old one, an iPhone 6, was due for a replacement anyway. I've kept the new phone close, and so far, nothing had been found via Malwarebytes. I don't think someone would have been able to install something onto my new iPhone via USB, because I have not let it out of sight since I bought it. I even sleep with it in my pocket. In the weeks following the purchase of my new iPhone, I've started noticing small objects in my house moving around when I'm away at work or school. It isn't anything major. It's not like my room looks as if it's been ransacked, but there are still small things being moved around. The most prominent example of this is what happened with my desk drawer. My desk drawer is slightly crooked, doesn't shut completely unless you push it a certain way. I almost never shut it all the way because I don't really need to. I left for work one day and came back to the drawer being completely shut. I would have assumed that I just shut it properly that morning and forgotten about it, but I know for a fact that I left it slightly ajar. I know that I grabbed a pencil from the drawer that morning to write a shopping list, and I distinctly remember the corner of the drawer colliding with the frame. For some reason that morning, I decided that I wanted to shut the door completely. One of my hands was occupied, and I gave a half-hearted attempt to shut the drawer, which I know for a fact that failed. I tried for a few seconds before deciding that it wasn't worth the effort and leaving for work. When I returned, the contents of my desk were in order, but the drawer was fully closed. This really freaked me out, and the next morning, I pulled a few loose strands from my hair and shut them in each entrance to my house. When I returned from work, all of the hairs were still in place. I calmed down slightly until I realized that I had forgotten the windows. I tried the same thing next morning with the doors, along with every window on the first floor of my house. When I returned, I found that the hair in my laundry room window, which is near the back of my house, was gone. I tried opening the window from the outside, and lo and behold, I was able to open it. This is really odd because I never opened that window. I went inside to inspect the lock, and I found that the latch that unlocks and locks the window had been tampered with. The latch on my window attaches to the rest of the mechanism via a square peg and hole. The latch has a socket that fits over the square peg, and it is permanently attached via glue. I found that I was able to turn the latch really easily. I then noticed that there was a flat plastic cap that matched the color of the latch attached to the top. I pulled it off to reveal a screw, which I removed. I then removed the latch itself, and saw that while the latch said the window was locked, the peg below, which controls the actual locking mechanism, had been turned to the unlocked position. Moreover, the square peg had been sanded down to a circle. This rendered the latch useless. The screw, which was somewhat loose, still allowed the latch to turn while fastening it to the rest of the mechanism. The plastic cap covered and hid the top of the screw. One really strange detail of this is the fact that opening the window triggered my alarm. My alarm uses magnetic sensors on my windows and doors. If they are moved too far from each other while the alarm is armed, it will set the alarm off. I triggered the alarm when I opened the window, but the fact that the hair was gone confirmed that the window had been opened at another point that day. The alarm obviously was not set off, and I have no idea how someone could have bypassed it. I'm not one to immediately jump to the conclusion that the FBI is spying on me, but I do think I am being watched or routinely having my house searched because of what I posted. I understand that most of these pieces of evidence that I presented could easily be explained away. The one thing that confirmed this for me was my window being tampered with. I have replaced the window, but I don't think stopping whoever is breaking in is as easy as that. Whoever this person is, they have access to malware that cannot be detected by standard antivirus programs, have a lot of time on their hands, and has the ability to custom make a plastic cap that perfectly fits my window latch, which probably means that this person/persons has some funding. I know it was custom made because my laundry room is pretty old. The window has not been replaced since the 1970s, and although the plastic of the latch was white, it had yellowed slightly with age. The plastic cap that hid the screw had that same aged look, but the way the plastic felt in my hands in comparison to the original latch told me that it was artificially done. I have absolutely no idea who is doing this, and it's really beginning to scare me. Please give me help and or advice, because I don't know what to do. I've been interested in Dogmen for years, and have never noticed this before I made the post telling about what's going on in my town, which I find quite odd. I've avoided using the exact name of the town in this post, because I think it may be on a list of keywords that cause my post to be deleted. The town is in eastern Massachusetts, and you can see the name in my pinned post. Whatever is going on between Dogmen and the local kids, me posting about it seems to have struck a nerve. Just over a month ago, I made a post talking about how I was being monitored because of my research. Quite a few things have happened since then, and I finally have time to write more about what happened. I'll pick up where I left off. After I made my initial post, I started to get extremely paranoid. I did not feel safe in my own home anymore, which is a truly terrible feeling. Over the next 2 weeks, I fell into a nervous spiral. I would get extremely nervous when something was not in the exact place I thought I left it, because I had no idea whether the object moving had something to do with what is happening to me or not. I made sure to pay close attention to the new window I installed, and as far as I know, it has not been tampered with. For the next week or so, I continued to notice small changes in the way my house was organized. The things I noticed then were different from what I noticed prior to making the post. Originally, it looked as if someone had searched my house and hastily put everything back, but that quickly shifted to weird, almost nonsensical changes. For example, I have 3 decorative portraits of fruit in my kitchen. They've been up for as long as I've been living in my house, and on multiple occasions, when I came back from work, they were in a different order. I've always put them back to normal, and a few days later, they would move again. To make matters worse, I have no idea how whoever was surveilling me was getting into my house. I continued to do the hair in the door thing that I explained in my previous post all throughout the week, and I never saw them out of place. Of course, I began to assume that whoever was monitoring me caught on and started replacing the hair. This made me incredibly nervous, because I've been routinely checking all my doors and windows for signs of modification, but I never found anything. I knew that I would be pretty much screwed if any more of my door or window locks were disabled, because I don't currently have the money to replace them with something more durable. The stress of these two situations made me so paranoid that it became hard for me to think straight. Now that I'm in a better position to think, I've developed a theory as to why the changes made to my house are so weird and nonsensical. Before I made my initial post about being monitored, when the situation was just starting, my house was being entered and searched exclusively to find information/monitor me. When I made my post about what was happening to me, I think whoever was monitoring me saw the post too. I'm not really surprised by this, because I have reason to believe that the person/people behind the break-ins frequent this forum. Posts about my brother seeing a dogman mysteriously vanish over several months. Once whoever is behind this break-ins knew that I was aware of them, they shifted their objective from monitoring to intimidation. I almost feel like the whole situation is just one big veiled threat at this point. I know that someone is coming into my house and searching it, and whoever it is wants to make it known that they are more powerful than me and I can't do anything to stop them. To do this, they constantly remind me that they are present by moving various objects around the house. I have no doubt that I'm still being closely monitored, but I now think that whoever is doing this is trying to scare me as much as possible. This confuses me, because I have no idea what they're trying to intimidate me into. I think it's most likely that they want me to start posting about what happened to my brother and how I'm being monitored, so I'm openly defying them and doing it anyway. Anyway, a few more days passed without much happening, until I came home from work one day and saw that both of the bookshelves in my bedroom had been toppled. All of my stuff was absolutely everywhere, and pretty much everything in the bookshelf's path, including my bed, were destroyed. This drove me to my breaking point, and for lack of a better term, I completely lost it. I don't really remember the fine details of what happened that night, but I know that I got my camping supplies from the basement and drove out to the Golden Road in northern Maine. I didn't bring any phones or devices, because I was worried they could use them to track me. The Golden Road is a very long logging road, and I remember going on a canoeing trip with my summer camp there several years ago. Perhaps that's why I chose to go there. I wasn't right in the head that night, and I decided to drive out to the most remote place I knew of. Looking back, I have no clue what my plan was that night, apart from get the hell away from the house. The drive was about 5 hours long, and I reached the Golden Road at around 11 p.m. From there, I drove until I reached a bridge. I'm not entirely sure which bridge it was, but I pulled over, got my backpack from the trunk, and went out into the woods off to the side of the bridge, completely abandoning my car in the process. Obviously, I don't last long out there with my crazed state of mind and lack of a trail. I wandered aimlessly for a few hours. It was pretty much pitch black, and I did not want to use my flashlight because I was worried that it would make me more visible. I tripped constantly and got pretty banged up in the process. I eventually collapsed at the side of a river at what I think was around 4 a.m. because I remember that the sun was just beginning to come up. Thank God a forest ranger found me. I ended up having to be hospitalized for 3 days, and during that time, I talked to a ton of people, family included, who helped me calm down. I tried to avoid talking about the Dogmen so that I didn't seem even more crazy, but I definitely babbled about the government shortly after I came to. I have a long history of panic attacks, so that definitely helped the situation seem more normal to my family. Both the doctors and my family now think I had a really bad panic attack because I didn't have enough money to pay my taxes and was worried that the government would come after me and arrest me. That's obviously not accurate, but I'm not correcting them. I just got back from the hospital a few hours ago and am in a far better place mentally. So far, nothing in my house is out of the ordinary apart from my destroyed bedroom. I spent that time cleaning up the mess in my room and finally have time to write this update. I'm still terrified, but I'm not going to let another breakdown happen. That's what they want, so I won't let it happen. I'm going to do my best to stay calm, while still being as cautious and observant as possible. Since I've been essentially having something of a slow meltdown for the past month and a half, I didn't think to take any pictures. Next time something happens, I will be sure to take photos. I've read a few things on this forum, along with some other sites about theories about some sort of government branch that deals with Dogmen. Does anyone know where I can find more information about this, and/or information about how the government deals with civilians who have somehow stumbled upon secret projects and information? That would be really helpful to me. Any advice / your thoughts on the situation would be greatly appreciated. I know it's been a pretty long time since my last update, but I have a lot to say. This is going to require some context, but I'll try to keep it brief. A few years ago, there was a very small earthquake in Boxford and the surrounding area. It was so small that no one really noticed it until it was on the news a few days later. I only knew about it because while it wasn't really perceptible to humans, it was enough to cause minor damage to my house. There was a small piece of polished stone on the threshold of the door from my garage door to my house, and after the earthquake, I noticed that it had cracked down the middle. It still fits snugly in the threshold, but if you step on the edge, half of it comes off. It's pretty hard to put back in. You have to lift up both halves in a weird way to put the second half back in. I've gotten used to stepping over it, but occasionally, somebody will accidentally step onto it. When I came back from work just over a month ago, the stone on the threshold was out of place. It wasn't detached, but it looked as if someone had knocked it out of place and replaced it without knowing exactly how. This was extremely odd because the garage door was closed and locked. I didn't really think much of it and assumed I stepped on it on the way out. After a few hours, I had to go down to my basement to get something. At the bottom of the stairs, I found the safe I keep things like my passport in. Someone had ripped it out of the wall and tried to smash it open with a brick. The brick was laying on one of the steps, and the safe was on the basement floor. I think it's worth saying that although the safe belongs to me, I have no clue where the brick came from. Just over a week later, I got pretty sick at work and came home early to a ton of police and cars and an ambulance parked outside of my house. Each and every one of the police cars said that they were with the Boxford Police Department, but none of them had license plates or even plate mounts. I thought that this had something to do with the fact that these were police cars, but I did some research later and I'm pretty sure that police cars need license plates just as much as any other car. The moment I pulled up into the driveway, more than 10 guys in police uniforms ran out of my house and got into their vehicles. They were all armed. All of them were carrying massive guns. I don't really know much about guns, so I have no idea what kind they were. All I really know for sure was that they were not handguns because they took 2 hands to carry. They looked automatic, but again, I'm not 100% sure. Some of the guys were wearing heavy-looking black vests. I'm pretty sure the guys laughed because I showed up. By the time I was in the driveway, the ambulance and most of the police cars were gone. A group of 2 people and 1 car stayed behind. One guy, still holding a gun, walked up to my car and asked me to roll down my window. I obliged and asked him why the hell he was at my house. He said something about a gas leak. The only reason I'm not being more specific is because that's pretty much all he said. The whole exchange was extremely rushed and not at all police-like. All he really said was that he was there to check out a dangerous natural gas leak. I barely had time to get a word out before he walked away, got into his car, and drove off with his partner. I didn't really get a good look at the second guy, but remember exactly what the guy who walked up to my car looked like. He was white, looked between 40 and 50 years old, had a very short grey beard, sideburns, and relatively small brown eyes. His hair was a sort of greyish black and wasn't all that long. The police uniform he was wearing was slightly too small for him. I was able to get a photo of his car and the lack of a license plate by zooming in on it with my iPhone camera from the bottom of my driveway. Sorry about the incredibly poor quality. I wish I got more photos of the people and vehicles, but again, I was incredibly nervous and did not want to get myself in more trouble than I thought I was already in. This was sort of the last straw for me, and I spent the next few weeks looking for a rental property to move into for the foreseeable future. During that time, I saw an ambulance drive up and down my street several times. I'm reasonably sure that this ambulance was the same one I saw before, because it did not have a license plate. I've pretty much ruled out the idea that someone on my street got hurt because I live on a dead-end street. There are less than 8 houses on it, and everyone knows each other, so if someone got seriously hurt, I would have heard about it. The ambulance could not have been on the way to an emergency, because like I said, my street is on a dead end. I don't want to sound crazy, but I don't think that thing was a real ambulance. I'm now living in a rental property, a fair distance from Boxford, but still close enough to travel between where I'm living and Boxford. I don't want to say the exact name of the town/city I'm in for obvious reasons. I have a sort of half-baked theory about the whole police incident. This is pure speculation, and I want to make it clear that I don't fully believe believe it. It's just what makes the most sense to me with the evidence and experiences I've had as of now. My brother is part of the Cub Scouts, and I usually drive him to the pack meetings. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the Boxford Police Department sometimes show up to talk about safety. They're all really nice people, and I know a lot of the members from the Scout meetings. I did not recognize a single person in my driveway. I know I can't be sure because I was far away from most of them, but none of them were even remotely similar. I think that this is direct proof of two things. One, that these people weren't part of the Boxford Police Department, and two, that whoever is breaking into, damaging, searching my house is way more than one person. This means that those vehicles that I saw weren't actually real police or ambulance. Law enforcement and EMTs are a pretty good thing to disguise as if you want to surveil someone without their knowledge. They can go a lot of places without being asked questions, won't look suspicious carrying certain equipment, and almost always get the right of way. I think the ambulance is actually some kind of surveillance vehicle. I only think this because it drove by my house several times and is large enough to carry a ton of specialized equipment. If this is true, then this organization has one hell of a budget. They have enough funding to get at least 5 police cars and an ambulance, have them customized to look like Boxford police vehicles, and afford all that equipment that they were carrying, and that's just what I saw. God knows what was in the ambulance. The only contradiction in my theory is that if this organization is so specialized, why did they try to break into my safe with a brick? Shouldn't they have something better than a brick? This is somewhat far-fetched, but I think the thing with the safe was only really meant to intimidate me. Sort of like the reasonless switching of the paintings on my wall that I mentioned in a previous post. What could they want with my passport? To steal my identity? I doubt it. I don't think I was supposed to see those vehicles though. I left work pretty unexpectedly because I got a pretty severe stomach bug, and when I showed up in my driveway, everyone got out of there pretty fast. The excuse that I was given seemed extremely rushed, which leads me to believe that my early arrival was not expected. I didn't really leave work early often because I need money. The last time was back in 2020, when I started to experience minor COVID-like symptoms. I actually think this theory is pretty probable because that encounter I had at my house was beyond suspicious. That definitely was not the police. Now I'm assuming that the reason this is all happening to me is that I wrote in great detail about the Dogmen situation in Boxford and how it seems to be exclusively targeting kids and teens, along with the fact that it goes back years. Whoever is doing all of this to me really did not want this information available to the public. I'm not sure what they were thinking, given the fact that this is affecting multiple people in multiple close-knit towns. Something like this would be pretty hard to hide, and I'm willing to bet that they were banking on the fact that no one would take a kid who claimed to have seen a werewolf seriously. I brought the information to a group that takes that kind of stuff very seriously, and now, the situation is officially on someone else's radar. I don't think the hypothetical organization that is doing this is trying to stop whatever is going on. If anything, activity has actually accelerated in the past few years. I don't know if I've mentioned this elsewhere, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but according to my brother, there are a ton of other boys around town that have seen the Dogmen too. Anyway, I feel like this organization does not want people knowing much about what is going on. In response to this, I've doubled down on my research, looking for anything weird in my town's history. I have no idea whether I'm putting myself in danger or not by directly defying these people, but I don't really care about my safety anymore. I'm not going to take this lightly. My brother, along with every other kid in the area, might be in serious danger.